Hey, what's up YouTube? So today I'll be showing you how to install Ubuntu on VirtualBox virtual machine. So let's go and get started. First of all, what we're going to do is open up a browser and download a couple of things. First of all, it's going to be VirtualBox. Go into VirtualBox, type it in VirtualBox on Google actually, and then click download. And we're going to download the first one, VirtualBox 4.3.1 or 10 for Windows. So, and then this is going to work for 32-bit or 64-bit system. So x86, which is 32-bit, and AMD 64 is going to be your 64-bit system. Just click download and save it into your download folder or whatever you want to save it as, and then go through the installation process. It's fairly easy to install, just like you install any other program. Once you do so, let's go ahead and do Ubuntu and click on there. And then what we're going to do is actually go into desktop, and let's say get Ubuntu now. You can get either 64-bit or 32. Again, it says if you're running less than 2 gigs of RAM, then you should download 32-bit. So whichever one you're gonna run, just go ahead and download one of those, and that should work. It should be fairly large amount of file, so just keep that in mind. It might take a little while to actually download everything. And if you do wanted to donate to Ubuntu, sure, go ahead and do that. And if not, you can just say no, not right now, and take me to the download site. Once you do that, hit just download, and it should actually give you download link in a second or two. There you go, and you can save it on your desktop or whatever. I'm gonna cancel it since it's already been downloaded and all this kind of stuff, and let's go and close our browser. So next thing we're gonna do is actually once you install VirtualBox, let's go and open that up. So here's the VirtualBox. It's already been installed, it's already been running. So double click that, and I already have Linux Mint, actually one of my system that I install on VirtualBox. In order to install Ubuntu on it, so make sure Ubuntu is downloaded, you got the ISO, all this good stuff, and I do. It's right there, and I'm actually using Ubuntu 12.04 since that's the version I happen to have. In VirtualBox, what we're going to do is actually click on New. Let's name it Ubuntu, and it should auto-populate that for you. It's a Linux system type, and the version is Ubuntu. We're going to use 64-bit in my case, so you can select 64. If you will be using 32, just go ahead and select 32. It doesn't really matter, so I'm going to use 64 and click next. Now they recommended at least 2 gigs or more for 64-bit, so I'm gonna apply around 3 gigs. Let's do so. Whatever. I'm gonna just 367. I'm not sure if it's exactly 3 gigs, but I'm gonna do next. Create a virtual hard drive now, and that's what we're gonna do. Just keep that as a default. Next. VDI, virtual disk image. That's fine. Default again. Do next. And here's what you want to kind of pay attention to it. So dynamic versus fixed. Basically dynamic drive, so if you assign 10 gigs of storage for your Ubuntu or Linux Mint, then it's going to actually, if it's using 6 gigs, then it's going to use 6 only. And then if it needs more, you can it would automatically apply more up to 10 gigs, because you said this file size is going to be about 10 gigs. Now if you do fixed, then what it's going to do is actually create a full drive a size of 10 gigs, for instance. And if you want to go that way, you can certainly do so, but I'm going to keep it as a dynamic just for whatever reason. And click next, and we're going to apply. They recommend at least 8 gigs of storage, so what I'm going to do is actually give at least 25. Why not? So I'm gonna give about 25. You can get 10 or 15 or whatever, but 25 is what I'm gonna go for. And then I'm gonna say create. There we go. So now again, I already had the Mint here, and this is Ubuntu. This is not it. So what we're gonna do is now select Ubuntu, and then click on settings. Once you click on settings, the first one, just keep that whatever that is. Go into system, and we're gonna go into processor. Now this is processor, basically assigning like how many processor you want it to use for Ubuntu. You guys might have a dual core processor or a quad core processor. I happen to have AMD FX 8320, which is an 8 core processor, so I'm actually gonna apply 2 cores here. And right there it says number 2, which is good enough. And make sure these two are actually enabled, and let's go into display. Let's get a little bit more display memory. I am running actually AMD graphics card as well, so I'm gonna give 128. You can give certainly 64 or a little bit more than 1 megabyte basically. If you do want it to enable 3D, you can do so. I'm not going to as of right now. What I'm gonna do is keep it bare minimum, so I can run the system, and then if I need it, I'll go ahead and enable that back again, because you can get back into the settings anytime you want. The next thing we were going to do is actually go into storage, and you see this controller IDE, which is the old hard drive thing. What we're going to do is click on empty, and on this side you're going to see like a browse kind of thing, or CD. Click on there and choose a virtual CD or disk. Click on there, and then mine is already automatically set up as a desktop, but what you can do is go here and select the file where you actually saved the Ubuntu file. Usually for most people it's going to be on download folder. I usually like to keep it on my desktop just to make my life easier, and then basically click on Ubuntu, whatever version that happens to be, 32-bit, 64-bit, 12.04 or 14.04 or 13, doesn't matter. Just go ahead and click on it and say open. Now it's populated right there, and the rest of it we're just gonna keep that default. So let's just ignore all the rest and just say okay. Now that's a bare minimum setup right there. We got all the information as we needed here, just in case if you wanna double check and see you got everything correct or not. And you can either double click or you can just say start. We're gonna say start. Again, it really doesn't matter, and it's gonna start loading up Ubuntu on it. So wait and watch kind of game here. It should go through all the process. Now VirtualBox is basically what it lets you do is you can run entire system within a system. So if you're running Mac and you want it to run Windows on it, instead of doing boot camp, which lets you select one or the other, this one you can run Mac in the background and Windows on the front. Or you want it to run Linux, you already have Linux running in background and you want it to run a Windows on it, you can certainly do so and run a Windows on it. So, and same thing, if you're running Windows, you can run Linux or whatever distribution you want it to use. So you have all the choices. Now, at this point, so basically just like how you install a CD and all those kind of stuff, the CD has been loaded, and now you have option to try the Ubuntu or install the Ubuntu. If you try it, it's not going to go through all the stuff, so let's go ahead and install it so I can show you guys how to go through the installation process. So click on install Ubuntu. It says has at least 4.7 gigs drive, so they require at least 4.7 gigs, and if it's connected to the online, you can also download the update and install those as well. And if you do want it to install like MP3 plugin and all those kind of stuff, you can certainly click here, and then it's going to start installing that for you, so you don't have to do all the stuff at the end once you get into the system. So what we're going to do is actually I'm going to keep those two blank, but I strongly recommend for this video I'm just going to make it like small, and that's the reason I'm doing this. But I strongly recommend just getting all the updates, and if you want it, if you are using this for quite a longer time and all this kind of stuff, then go ahead and download the third-party software as well. It just makes your life easier afterwards. I'm going to uncheck that so it doesn't take longer time to actually go through the process, and click continue. Now it says erase disk and install Ubuntu on it. Now it's fine because we are actually using a VirtualBox CD kind of thing, or VirtualBox hard drive. So VirtualBox created a 25 gigs of hard drive, or whatever size you actually gave it to the VirtualBox, right? So it's okay. It's not going to erase anything on your computer or anything like that. It just created basically a virtual hard drive, and that's what we're going to do is actually say sure, why not. Let's go and do continue. So erase disk and install Ubuntu on it. Continue. It says 26.8 gigs. I applied 25, so it's okay. It's gonna say that that's not a problem. Just say install now, and it's gonna start doing its installation process. This process will take a little bit longer time, as we're gonna set up. Meantime it's installing in the background. It's actually gonna ask you for the date and time and your username and a password and all this kind of good stuff. So we're gonna go through all the process. Let's keep that as a New York. And let's continue. Whatever the time you happen to be, you can select that. That's not a problem. If you're not sure what kind of keyboard you have, you can certainly type it here, but I know mine is US and English based, so let's go and do continue. These are all typical stuff, and now it's going to want me to create my username and a password. So my name is Rahul Gandhi, and I'm going to keep it as first name dash VM, not AM, VM, virtual machine. This makes life easier. You can't really do capital on here, so if I do R as a capital, you must have a lowercase, so that's why it's lowercase, automatically populated for you. And you can of course change your name, whatever name you want it to be. So if you wanted to say home, you can say so. It doesn't have to match your name, your full name, but it makes life easier. And then we're going to create a password, because if you don't, it's going to ask you to create one. So let's go and create one. If I click on it, oh, and your numlock, make sure it's on. And you can, if you're the only person who's using it and you don't want to type in your password every time you actually open up VirtualBox, and when you put into Ubuntu, you can say log in automatically, or require password every time it actually starts the Ubuntu on it. So it doesn't matter which way you're doing. I'm just going to keep require password just for whatever reason, and say continue. Now all the settings that we have to do is pretty much done, and it's just gonna try to install Ubuntu on it and go through all the process. Meantime, you can scroll through all the slides and kind of read about what Ubuntu has to offer. But it's got a bunch of software that you can download. You can certainly download Chrome and all this kind of stuff. GIMP is one of the other one, where you can actually edit the pictures, as well as other stuff. You can get a video editors and all this kind of thing as well, and also offer Ubuntu One Cloud as well. So you have all this kind of stuff.